It's a dark day for Gene Munster, too. This is one of my predictions for best performers in FANG in 2019. Scott, I still stand behind that despite this pullback here, in part because I feel an element of deja vu as I listen to the conversation here and think back to 2008, 2009, when some of the economic slowdown started to impact Apple. It had an impact in different geographies. It also started to lengthen out the upgrade cycles. I want to give a nod to Tony Sacconaghi, who has talked a lot about these lengthening upgrade cycles and how that could impact Apple. But the big picture is this, is people largely, there is the shift that Dan was talking about in China, about WeChat and some of the cheaper competitors. But on the whole, Apple's brand continues to be strong. And on the whole, we continue to need tech. And so I agree that this is going to take some time for investors, probably a quarter or two, for investors to kind of regain some element of confidence. That may take a full year. But I'm confident that this is not the beginning of the end of Apple. I think that they still have some huge opportunities ahead, in particular what's going to happen with 5G, and that's going to be a major hardware upgrade. And I think that the conversations of the next few months will be a thing of the past.
But isn't it an issue? You just mentioned 5G, but there's been reports out that Samsung and a lot of their competitors are going to have 5G phones ready in the fall, yet Apple is going to miss this cycle, Gene. Isn't this kind of an issue right here?
They can miss it by several months. I don't think that they can miss it by a year, so we're going to wait and see. The other part, too, is having 5G phones that need to give a little bit of clarity there, too, Dan, is that 5G right now doesn't have a ton of coverage in the U.S. I think that broadly we're thinking 2020, 2021 is when the coverage ramps up. So there is a window for them not to have that feature, and it's not necessarily a competitive headwind, but they clearly need to be there. This is a major upgrade. I'm not trying to look at the silver lining down the road here, but what I'm trying to do is give some perspective that China was bad. These upgrade extended, or the lack of subsidies that Tim Cook is talking about, that's nothing new. I was disappointed to hear Tim talk about that because that's been going on for 2 years. But I think the China thing is real. I think when he talked about what's going on social media and WeChat related to Huawei and the CFO, I mean, as crazy as that sounds, I think that had at least a fractional impact on what we're talking about here.
To be clear,
I do believe.
To be clear, I'm sorry, Gene, if you were still a sell-side analyst and you were giving research out on this, you'd have a strong buy on Apple tonight on this pullback?
I would. And the reason is this, is that I think that right now we've priced in the bad news. I think the bad news is in here. I don't think that there is anything structurally wrong with Apple's, and I can disagree with some of the people on set there, but I don't think that there is anything structurally wrong with Apple and what's going to happen with their market share. The fact that they gained 100 million users over the last year, I think, is evidence that this services theme will be intact. Josh, incredible interview that Josh had there. One thing that I picked up that Tim said is that they're exploring ways for people to buy on a monthly basis. So they're talking about adding their own Apple subscription. That may just be the iPhone. That may be other products, too. So, Scott, I am still a big believer in this. I think that Apple over the next few years can earn a consumer staples type of a multiple. I still believe this can be a much bigger stock, potentially $350. So as crazy as that sounds on a day like today, I think that all the news doesn't rock my confidence in this longer term, the theory. It will take time, but it doesn't change the longer term.
Hey, Gene, it's Tim. How about your confidence in the supply chain and just stocks that have already been knocked down? I mean, what do you do, again, as an analyst in this space to the rest of the space? Supply chain's really tough, in part because you're seeing the effects of what happens with global trade and loosening economies. But also you have the issue about who Apple wants to do business with, too. That adds just a layer of complexity. So, Tim, I'm going to stay outside of that and not make any recommendations on where to go with that. But I do feel that directionally what they're trying to build around a more of a services hardware business that operates like services is still intact.
Hey, Gene, do you think there's somewhat of a floor in the stock simply put in by the fact that and he alluded to it, did Tim Cook with Josh at the end of the interview, they're going to be big buyers of their own stock?
Yeah, I want to be careful on the floor idea. I think Dan said it earlier, felt like it would have been in higher. I agreed with that. But I can say that Apple still, even with these depressed numbers, that $84 billion in revenue, 8% off from what people were expecting, they're still going to be able to probably buy back close to $20 billion. Let me leave you with one other just quick thought. As I'm thinking through this and doing this real time.
Yep.
I think there's this piece about this price increase that happened in September. It was 23% was the average weight price increase. I think that consumers, at least in China, aren't taking that price increase. So I do think we're going to enter a phase where we clearly don't see those big jumps in pricing. I would see if Apple is more aggressive actually at discounting to use this as an opportunity to gain market share. I would actually view that as favorable.
Gene, not easy to do this on the fly, as you said, but we greatly appreciate you doing that for us tonight. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Gene Munster, Loup Ventures. You agree? Strong buy tonight.
No, I don't agree with strong buy. No, I mean, if anything, what Guy hit on is that how much of this is priced in, right? So as a trader, you have to evaluate there is a certain amount of this that's priced in, a certain amount of the economic weaknesses that is priced in. You can make the argument that all these negative things are ultimately going to turn around, and this pushes people into a situation or countries into a situation where they have to make a deal. If that is the case, and if you believe that and the market picks up on that theme, then maybe, yeah, you can nibble at Apple, but I think there's better places to be than Apple. I think Apple's a no-touch until it works through this problem.
Let me just bring you an email that I got from Jeffrey Gundlach, who says this is the kind of stuff that happens in a bear market. Okay, as we broaden out the conversation to how tomorrow and the days ahead are going to look as a result of a company like this delivering the bomb that it just dropped.
So now this is going to sound disingenuous. It's not intended to be. But if we had started a normal show tonight, what I was going to say was, you know, the S&P traded back to this sort of 25-30 level, which was a huge support level, seemingly has failed. And I thought we'd make another retest down to that 2,300 level or so. Now it sounds like I'm Monday morning quarterback, but I think it sets up exactly that way. How do you believe in sort of earnings for the broader market when you're hearing commentary not only from Apple today, but from your tweet on December 18th? A PPG, a FedEx, a Micron, there's a laundry list of companies.
Well, remember when, from a market perspective, we were saying, oh, my goodness, thank goodness Apple's holding in here. And now Apple may be the poster child of everything that has changed. And again, if you ask me, who liked Apple yesterday at these levels, what changed today? So clearly demand is weaker than forecast. The services business is going as fast as I could want it to go. And is the market in a place where I want to own it? And to me, no, the market is not in a place where you want to own it.
Guys, Gene said something that's really important. The Chinese carriers do not offer subsidies the way that the U.S. carriers do. So the fact that Tim Cook mentioned that the subsidy situation hasn't been helping us out, it just seems like they're throwing a lot of stuff up against the wall that it just seems a bit disingenuous here. And I think the other point's really, this may turn out to be one of the biggest unforced errors ever. What did Gene also say? That they've raised prices on their phones 23% year over year into what could be one of the most sharp declines in economic growth.
Which was mitigating, right? The ASP was mitigating.
If you're just joining us home from work or just tuning us in now, 5:30 on the East Coast, the bombshell tonight from Apple, that company warning on its Q1 revenue guidance, taking it down to $84 billion, that from $91.5 billion. It is a stunning move from one of the biggest stocks, once the biggest stock on earth. Now, what, maybe in second place behind Microsoft. The stock's been down about 30% or so in the last 3 months and only adding to those declines tonight.